Hello, everyone. This is Elio, co-founder and CEO at Scalestack. I was recently interviewed by Will Martin over a founder video podcast, and we ended up having such a lively conversation that touched on many topics about like Scalestack and its enterprise customers and what we're doing and how we differentiate in the market versus Clay and others, that we thought it could make for a really nice special episode for our Revenue Engine Masters podcast series. So hope you enjoy the show, and feel free to browse scalestack.ai if you want to learn more, or email me at elio, E-L-I-O, at scalestack.ai.
Today we have Elio Narciso, founder and CEO of Scalestack. We're going to learn more about the tool, talk about GTM, his background, how the tool compares to Clay, and more. So yeah, first off, pleasure. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Will. It's great to be here, and nice to meet you. Yes, we've just met, and I think it's great, and I love that we are rolling. But yeah, it's great to be here.
Awesome. So let's start with kind of like your background. You spent a few years building up and managing the AWS Global Startup Program. How that experience kind of shaped or led you to founding Scalestack, and kind of like what did you learn there about enterprise tech startups, go to market, that led you to build this tool?
I spent almost 5 years at Amazon before Scalestack. And before that, I was like, I've been starting and building companies for a while. So that was an unusual experience for me. I've always been curious about Amazon and their leadership principles, and I wanted to see what could be accomplished in such a large organization. They were in need of building better relationships with startups, particularly mid to late stage. So not the earlier stage startups that just starting, but companies that have already raised like maybe Series A or Series B and are on their track to fast growth. And so they had this problem identified, and they wanted to build a team with people that were experienced in the startup. And so I joined in early 2018 as a senior BD leader, and we built a small but mean team worldwide to support these mid to late stage startups. And so after more or less the first year, I proposed to build a program to fully support with more resources, more people, more money, this really amazing startups that were part of the AWS ecosystem. And so I don't know if you've read about Amazon, but they have a huge writing culture. And so I wrote a doc explaining what I wanted to do, and people liked it. And it went up to Andy Jassy, which at the time was the CEO of AWS and now is the CEO of Amazon. And he liked it and he approved it. And so we launched the AWS Global Startup Program, I think in 2019 or something like that. Yeah, the end of 2019, early 2020. By the time I left to fully focus on Scalestack, we had 600 startups under management and really successful companies like Notion, Webflow, Foursquare, and many others. It impacted a lot about what we're doing at Scalestack, because over and over in supporting these startups, we realized two things. The first is that reps were very inefficient. Sales reps at these companies had huge pockets of unproductive work, which related to making sense of data about target, in the form of target accounts or leads. And that's very inefficient. And the inefficiency is what we wanted to solve, and why we started Scalestack.
I guess I wanted to know more as well about how that startup program was helping those 600 companies and how that led you to founding Scalestack.
The way the program was back then, It was helping companies in like three big areas, which was like, the co-marketing, co-selling, and joint development with AWS. So the idea was, how can AWS deploy resources to help and support these companies in their go-to-market? But like, at the end of the day, what most of these companies wanted was like more leads, more introductions, and like, more help from the entire like, AWS sales org, which is very big, to support their go-to-market. But a lot of the problems that I saw that we were solving for, these companies, were part of like a broader set of issues that these companies had in their own go-to-market. One big area, as mentioned briefly, was these reps had to spend, I don't know, 70% of their time wrangling data, handling data from Crunchbase or LinkedIn Sales Navigator or Apollo, Lucia, and so forth. And so kind of sounds like a waste of time. And, and these are like actual stats. And literally the number was, in 72% of my time on average, I don't spend selling. Only 28% of my time is spent selling. The rest is like, researching the prospects and the companies and like putting data somewhere from somewhere else. And so this was a big area of problem that we identified. The second area, which is sort of like related, a cause maybe or a symptom, but like if you ask any B2B company today, are you happy with the quality of the data in your CRM? The answer is like typically no. And that's exactly where Scalestack is focused on, in increasing the efficiency of the overall sales and marketing processes by orchestrating data automatically without like manual involvement from reps at large scale, and with automated processes which are fast by nature, and maybe increasingly so, using AI to like clean the data, normalize it, synthesize it. And that's what we are focusing on, and like those are the problems that we're solving.
That's awesome. That's actually a crazy stat from Salesforce. 72% of the time spent from sales reps is not selling, is dealing with data. That's insane.
The way to grow for companies, given that this is the efficiency that they have to handle, was, well, we have a lot of capital, so we can invest in hiring more people, which is really our like main goal. We want to flip that 70-30 on its head, which is like, hey, maybe they should spend 70% of the time selling and only 30 understanding data, but not creating the data. Because like the problem is that they spend so much time because they have to create the data. But if you do need to spend some time reading the data, absorbing the insights and all of that, because that's valuable. You cannot show up to a customer call and not knowing everything about like who the customer is, right? So the rep needs to spend time, understand that, but that cannot be the majority of your time.
You've seen many go-to-market motions at various, like a lot of companies. Well, how did your go-to-market strategy work back in those two companies? Would having Scalestack helped you grow those companies faster, I guess?
Mobev certainly, because Mobev targeted like marketeers, so marketing and advertising teams within large companies as well as like agencies. In that case, I mean, like, SkillStack really works well if you have like a wide addressable market. So like if you can sell to many companies and many people, like the ability to know who to sell into first is very important. So you need to know like how to prioritize your targets. If you only have like a handful of like named accounts, it's like the rep should really know their 5 accounts, but if the rep has like 100, 200 accounts, it cannot sit in her head or his head. And so like you need something to automate all of this data orchestration stuff. Plus there was then like the example and experience at Amazon, and like the program and the learning from these companies that were facing similar problems, like oh, we want to target a new type of customer, and can AWS help us penetrate that? And like it was first and foremost a data problem, like identifying like who is your ideal customer profile, and what type of companies and people and all of that.
The fundamental issue there is that in order to make a go-to-market function work, the first thing you need to do is build a list or build an account target account list, or like a TAM, basically. Like, what market are you going to focus on? And if you don't have that step, like that first step, streamlined, the less likely your go-to-market function is to succeed. So in order to get deeper into that, I know that one of the pillars of the tool is the universal API. How does it work, and why is it such a game changer?
You put it perfectly in terms of like the definition of the TAM. At a high level, there are like two main motions in go to market. One is the outbound motions, where like you go out and reach out customers. The other motion is inbound, where like people come to you and like want to talk to you, and they send you an email, they like they fill a form or something. We offer a solution for both of these motions, which at the end of the day is about data. For instance, like priority number one for our customer MongoDB, they need to understand the TAM in each account. TAM is like really important. And how do you define TAM? TAM is a combination of like maybe how many developers, but also like what's the size of that company, and like what's the revenue, or like what's the funding, or how much are they spending on cloud. So these are all data points, right? And we think that like by mixing and matching data sources with specific attributes that you can power with those data sources, by orchestrating all of this data, you end up with a data set which is your own, based on your ICP. And that's where we help companies on. So like for their ICP, their attributes at the scale they need in every territory, we compose this like target TAM list and account list, all enriched, all prioritized. We can power like inbound flows so that you have a lot of leads, and so we tell you like which go to market motion should you activate depending on the quality, quote unquote, of the lead, meaning like how well is matched to your ideal customer profile. Skillstack is not a point solution. That's not the idea of Skillstack. It's a very comprehensive platform. We make it as easy to use for the customer, but like we had to develop a universal API to like connect lots of different data sources, with API keys, or like ad hoc integrations, or maybe like ingesting CSV files, or getting data from Salesforce or HubSpot or Typeform or whatever it is. The other component is the workflow builder, which is like essentially a low code app for which you can compose the data architecture almost like if it's a Figma file. Like in Figma, you create boxes and you create like, your own design and stuff. That's what our platform does. But each box, it's a module, and each module performs a data function, which is maybe get some data from LinkedIn and clean that data and associate it to the right account. And maybe another module that does like, hey, this is, an account which is the parent of other accounts which are children of that account. So like Microsoft in Seattle is like parent, and then there is like Microsoft Germany or Italy or whatever, right? And those are child account. And so we use component of the platform to define that logic. Like, hey, we absorb the company description, and the output is this a B2B or B2C company? And properly categorizing your targets by B2C or B2B, it's an important element for many of our customers. And so universal API, workflow builder, and then like the output. The output are typically business apps that people have, like the CRM, or I don't know, Outreach or Salesloft. But increasingly with AI, there is going to be co-pilots or agents that want to perform things but they need good data. If you feed to this agents, copilots, apps, bad data about your target accounts or leads or the insights that you've gathered about them, the results are going to be a disaster no matter what.
That's how you can automate the entire list building process.
And then do that very efficiently, because I mean, like, depending on like what you're learning about that account or lead, you may decide that, it's not worth enriching it more. But if you start discovering things that make that account interesting, you keep going. And so like the waterfall or the workflow that we build, like it has like trigger points. They say, okay, this is interesting, let's do some more, let's connect Crunchbase, let's go look for like cloud spend. But we only do that, hence we consume data, if it makes sense, if like the account has like some signals that tells us that it's an interesting company or it's an interesting lead.
Exactly. So in a way, this is powering as well, not only signal-based selling, but efficient signal-based selling and effective without having to eat up a ton of time from sales rep.
The goal is that like all of this is performed by the platform and not by like the rep. I would say consumption of data, because data costs money, but also time that like people have to spend in like reading the data. No, so like, if you have a list of like 200 accounts, then like, you only enrich those full-fledged that like show like a lot of promise. So in that sense, yes, it can impact also the time that the rep has to spend.
Totally, totally. So let's talk about how Scalestack compares to other tools. How does Scalestack compare to Clay? What are the key differences?
First off, when I was at Amazon, like Amazon tells you, let's obsess about customers and not competitors. So like the obsession is really about like doing something that it's valuable for the customer. So I think that the problem is clear, people want to solve it, and it's hot in that sense. And Clay has done a phenomenal job. I mean, they raised a ton of money. We are very different because if I had to like summarize it, we are the Clay for the enterprise in a nutshell. An enterprise is basically for us a company that has, I don't know, at least 30, 40 people in sales and marketing. They have like wide addressable market. Our hypothesis is that Clay works well, as you said, right? Like if you are like an individual contributor with some technical expertise that like, enjoys the actual act of like wrangling data and like, connecting stuff and generating like spreadsheets and workflows on their own. But the assumption for us is that larger companies, number one, want to act at the org level. So imagine like one of our customers, MongoDB. They have like, thousands of reps. They cannot have like 1,000 different versions of the orchestration of the data. They have to have like one model or several models depending on the customer segment and depending on what they want to do, that then like trickles down to everyone. And so this is number one, org level orchestration that like trickles down to the reps or SDRs. Our hypothesis is that like if you use Scalestack as a RevOps leader, sales ops leader, you basically take this off of your plate. You don't have to wrangle basic data. You don't have to like create this data. But what you can do is receiving this data, well enriched, well clean, well prioritized, and build products or business apps on top of this data. So we have basically like managed the entire like, data enrichment process at scale, securely. We're SOC 2 compliant. So like, because the enterprises that we work with need that. But it's not just the scale, it's not just about the automation, it's not just that we can integrate any data source, but it's like, don't spend time wrangling basic data. just like, set it and forget it, and we'll handle the complexity based on what you tell us. We are able to generate data for any data points that you need. And so it doesn't need to be pre-configured, preset. Do you need like, I don't know, like a data point that is unique to you? We'll create a module, we'll deploy a module that like does that for you automatically without like using, people or analysts. But like the module will be deployed, and like if the data exists somewhere, we'll go and get it and bring it back in the orchestration.
Can you give me examples of like data points that customers have asked for?
You want to know how many developers a company has, and that's relatively simple, right? But then you want to know maybe how many developers with a specific skill set you can find in that. Maybe cloud skills or MongoDB skills, or like, maybe those there are more like DevOps versus like people that actually write code. And so you have to go deeper into like understanding who those developers are. The act of going into the website, take a screenshot, bring it back, just that, it's like, maybe you've lost 3 minutes. I don't know, whatever it is, right? 2 minutes. And also the triangulation of data points, so that like the triangulation of, for instance, like, IP addresses for downloads of apps, cross-reference with people that come to your website, and then indicating if like is the same person, and then like, is that a lead that like, is interested and that has like downloaded your app. So you can do a lot of stuff with, if you know where to find that data, and if you know how to cross-reference data with each other, right? And so that's what we do best. And we leverage like OpenAI or Claude or any of the LLMs that exist. But like, is the prompt engineering that is very important here to properly associate the right data point to the right territory, which is usually stuff that people do manually or sort of, or maybe with analysts or agencies. We do this for them automatically.
Why do you make the argument that agencies can become or are becoming a burden, and how? Well, we know how Scalestack can fix it. What's the argument there?
Focusing too much on competitors is usually not healthy. I really want to focus on customers. And like, I think that number one, we serve different customers. We are focusing because that's what we know best, is like, larger companies that have like larger sales and marketing teams. And like those companies have like really specific needs at the scale that they need to solve for. And like, they need to do this with, a level of security, a level of customization that like can be sold by our platform. We want to be like, the product for the enterprise, and we want to be like, a solution that you set and forget in many ways, because of the power of all of the workflow builder, the automation that you build, and the ability to like, customize at the edge, like, for instance, the scoring, or like, the data points. And like, we're building, and there is going to be like a lot of new launches that we're going to do between now and the end of the year. But we're building lots of technology in order to really make it easier for companies to transfer, even in verbal or natural language inputs, what they want to do. And we are like the ones that automate the building of the workflow. We don't want people spending their time on wrangling basic data. We want to, basically automate all of that, so that once they get like the data, enriched, clean, and ready for AI, very important, then they can do a lot of different things. And we have seen this evolution at customers that we serve. Like the RevOps teams used to be concerned with data quality before Scalestack. And then like after Scalestack, everything went quiet. And there were no more complaints about the data quality, so much that the RevOps teams could almost become like product managers. So we really want the RevOps, SalesOps teams to become product managers, in the sense that like, okay, now they have this great data set. So the problem is not like the data about my leads is wrong. how do I make it right, but is I have the right data about leads. How do I like use that data so that the reps, do a better job and go faster and roll out those campaigns like in a more effective way.
You mentioned, oh yeah, the launches. Is there a world in which the workflow builder learns by itself?
I think that the idea of like, like use LLMs, tell me what you need, and it automatically builds the workflow is the direction where we're going.
Can that LLM be trained on what are the best data sources as well to pick from?
Of course, I think that that's part of our value, that we need to have a point of view. We have many data sources. I think that they do a phenomenal job in like gathering like the raw data and packaging it in each of their like um, segment, but we do need to have a point of view as an orchestration, and that can be expressed in like, okay, for this data point, this is the data source, or maybe a combination of two, or maybe like a triangulation of several. So absolutely.
And then can that LLM be trained to not only build the workflow for you, but optimize it ongoingly for you?
People are like telling me X, Y, and Z, so absolutely. The feedback loop is very important, and like right now it's more like in batches. It will be done like on a regular iterative process.
Tell me about the AI copilot of Scalestack, and I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to touch on regarding that. Like, is there anything specific?
One of the workflows that we have launched for some of our customers get closer to like what's considered a co-pilot. Like Apple has the App Store, but Apple powers the App Store, and so the co-pilot that we launch and some of our customers are using for us is sort of like like a reference app that showcases what you can do if you have well orchestrated data. We are really focused on the App Store, and the equivalent of the App Store for us is the orchestration platform. So that's where we are putting the majority of the efforts and the focus. While we want the copilot to be really good, and I think it can be really good in specific situations where we can work collaboratively with the customer.
So now, apart from Scalestack, let's talk about your go-to-market strategy. How are you growing the company?
Our go-to-market strategy is like, on one end, we want to complement what like other competitors are doing to elevate the problem and the hotness of like the need of solving that problem. And so we want to talk about this a lot more. But having said that, it's also part of our strategy too. We want to elevate the conversation about all of these topics, because I think that like people are really realizing now that these problems needs to be solved, and we have the right platform to solve it. Direct sales, obviously, like it's one motion that we power with Scalestack, and so like that's another motion that we do. And then we want to build an ecosystem that like for us is different, because we just signed a partnership with a company called Carabinier Group, which is another RevOps consulting. They target like larger enterprises. So any like company that helps larger companies, like, with their CRM, or like, setting up, all of the infrastructure, could be interested in working with us for the data side on behalf of their customers. And then we have an advocate program, which is for like, sales, RevOps leaders that know other sales or RevOps leaders, and they can, recommend us to companies that they admire. That advocate program is available so that they can get, compensated in either cash or even RSAs of like Scalestack, if those deals convert. So it's a number of things that we're doing. Everybody's rowing in the same direction at the company. We're still like, about 20 people. So a size that can be handled. And so we're all like rowing the same direction to make sure that as many people as possible are aware of what we're doing for what type of customers. Because that's important. That's the other side. If your customers are willing to talk about you, and luckily they are, that's another like great motion in our go to market.
I had another question for you, like top workflows, and you get like a specific workflow that you were amazed by when, because of course part of the charm or amusement of building that this type of product, the product of which it is what companies make of it. It also comes with the experience of seeing customers build something that you wouldn't think of when you build the product itself, right? So have you experienced that already? I'm assuming yes, and if so, what was that workflow? Yeah.
You always and mostly learn from customers. Customers always provide like a clarity of thoughts because they know their problems for the most part. Maybe they don't know the solution, but like they have the right words to like express their like deeply felt pain points. And so the more you can listen to customers, the more you learn, and then trying to solve those pain points is always like for me the most fun part. The TAM workflow that we deployed for one of our largest customers was super interesting. The composition of the TAM in each territory and the ability to switch accounts, so to compose a better picture so that maybe you distribute like a good book of business across the org, so that if you give all of your best accounts to one rep is usually not the right strategy, right? So you want to distribute the TAM across the board. Another more recent workflow is an account discovery workflow. So in other words, like once we have enriched a lot of accounts for a customer, we'd love to add more accounts that resemble our best accounts. And so we deployed like an account discovery workflow by ingesting lots of different data sources, including newsletters, of several kinds. So like, actual newsletters that you get in your email, we send that, and the newsletter mention a company or news sites, and then like that company is like attracting the interest of the our AI, and then like it gets enriched, and then we check if it exists in the CRM, and if it doesn't, it's a new account that has been discovered that matches like in certain like confidence level the ideal customer profile. And that's something that we are deploying as we speak for a number of customers, and that's super exciting.
Yeah, great stuff. Again, thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
coming
you, Mo.
over.
This
I
was fun.
encourage all of the listeners check out your podcast and your LinkedIn, of course. And if they're going to SaaStr, look for you. So yeah, we'll include links on the description, so you can go check out Scalestack and Elio's LinkedIn and whatnot. Is there anything else that you want to shout out or whatever?
No, this was fun, and thank you for like the opportunity to talk about all of the stuff that I'm very passionate about, and the entire company is passionate about. We are just wrapping up our seed round, and so I think also the other thing that like I want to mention, we talked about like go to market and like what are our strategies. Part of all of this is also thanks to investors, and we're very proud of the investors that we have. I mean, it's easy to forget that like a lot of these startups wouldn't exist without investors, so I want to be very appreciative of that, and we will announce soon like our seed. But yeah, so I'm thankful for like the opportunity to talk about all of this stuff, and I'll see all of you on LinkedIn, I guess.